A maid invites her millionaire boss to dinner, but realizes she has spent her last savings. What happens when a ruthless millionaire who trusts no one is invited to dinner by his maid, and she spends her last savings just to impress him? Ethan Callahan thought he ruled the world from his glass tower until a simple homemade meal shattered his icy armor and forced him to confront everything he'd been running from his past, his fears, and his heart. But when a devastating misunderstanding turns trust into betrayal, their worlds come crashing down. Will love and humility be enough to rebuild what was lost? Stay tuned for this powerful, unexpected story of redemption, courage, and second chances. Before we begin the story, leave a comment below, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our latest stories. Enjoy the story. Ethan Callahan's office sat perched above the city skyline like a throne room in a glass castle. The view stretched endlessly steel and glass monuments to his ambition, each building a testament to his dominance over the world of real estate. But to Ethan, the beauty of the city wasn't in its lights or charm. It was in the numbers, the return on investment, the yield curves, the cold, hard facts. He checked his Rolex, impatiently sighing as he noticed the blinking cursor on his inbox. Another social function invite from the Chamber of Commerce. Delete. A charity gala his assistant had scheduled without asking. Declined. Ethan didn't do parties, smiles, or mingling unless it involved closing deals. Anything else was, in his words, a waste of billable hours. "You're late," Ethan said coldly as the door to his penthouse opened. Emily Vargas rushed inside, her face flushed from the cold air, strands of dark hair escaping the usually tight bun she wore like armor. "I apologize, Mr. Callahan," she panted, clutching a worn leather bag against her side. "My brother's interview ran over and then my car wouldn't start." "Excuses don't iron shirts." "Emily." Ethan cut her off, gesturing toward the sofa, now draped in a chaotic pile of high-end designer shirts. Emily bowed her head slightly. "I'll take care of it right away, sir." She disappeared into the laundry room without another word. Ethan turned back to his laptop, scrolling through valuations on his latest acquisition, a riverfront property that would soon be transformed into luxury condos for the city's elite. To Ethan, people were variables, assets, obstacles, clients, and employees like Emily, replaceable utilities that kept his world polished and tidy. But someone wasn't letting him live in that cold comfort zone today. "You could try being a human being, you know," came a voice from the home office. Ethan barely glanced up as Peter Monroe, his childhood friend turned business partner, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "She's your best employee, and you treat her like a vending machine," Peter added. "Excellence should be expected, not praised." Ethan replied, not bothering to look up. Peter rolled his eyes. "And that's why people call you the Ice King behind your back. They can call me whatever they want as long as they sign on the dotted line." Ethan shot back, finally meeting Peter's gaze. Peter smirked. "You think the world runs on contracts and spreadsheets. But people, Ethan, people run on something else." Ethan huffed, uninterested in another lecture on emotional intelligence. Montgomery Real Estate didn't become the city's fastest-growing firm by handing out hugs, Peter. "No, you got here because you're brilliant at business," Peter agreed. "But somewhere along the way, you forgot how to live." Ethan dismissed him with a wave, returning to his meticulously calculated empire. At 34, Ethan had it all: the penthouse, the cars, the respect of the industry, and a portfolio that made Wall Street whisper his name. What more was there? The world outside his tower had nothing to offer him, or so he thought. Later that afternoon, as Emily quietly gathered her cleaning supplies, she hesitated at the doorway, visibly summoning courage. Mr. Callahan. She began twisting the strap of her worn purse. I realize this is unconventional, but I'm hosting a small dinner this Saturday. It's my brother's birthday, and he's a huge admirer of your work. I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean everything to him if you could come. Ethan blinked. No one ever had invited him to their home. Before he could form a polite but firm refusal, Peter interjected. He'd love to. Peter grinned, ignoring Ethan's glare. What time? Emily's face lit up like the Christmas tree Ethan never bothered to decorate. 7 o'clock. It's nothing fancy. Just food and family. After she left, Ethan rounded on Peter. What the hell was that? You're going, Peter replied simply. Because you need to remember what the world looks like outside this marble tomb. It's inappropriate, Ethan snapped. I don't socialize with employees. Peter leaned closer, voice softening. You forgot where you came from, Ethan. You weren't always sitting in a corner office. You weren't born with a silver spoon. You clawed your way up like the rest of us. Maybe it's time you stopped pretending you didn't. That night, as Ethan reviewed the final proposal for his riverfront project, his phone buzzed. Callahan, he answered curtly. Ethan, it's Mitchell from the City Development Board. Ethan straightened in his chair. Mitchell, I trust you've reviewed our proposal. That's why I'm calling. I regret to inform you that the board selected Drake Industries' proposal instead. Ethan froze. What Vanessa Drake? Her numbers don't come close to ours. Her proposal had more heart, Ethan. Community programs, affordable housing, local involvement. The board felt her plan aligned more with the city's values. Ethan sat back stunned. He had lost. Not because his financials were weak, but because his project lacked what the board saw as heart. For the first time in years, a crack appeared in Ethan's bulletproof confidence. What if Peter was right? What if he had become so disconnected from people that he couldn't see what truly mattered anymore? On his desk sat a small notepad Emily had left with her address. A dinner at his maid's modest home suddenly felt less like an obligation and more like an opportunity. Not for networking or deals, but maybe to remember what the hell he was doing it all for. Ethan Callahan's sleek black Maserati looked absurdly out of place as he maneuvered it down the narrow, aging streets of East Brighton. The area, a patchwork of small, weathered homes and corner shops, was a far cry from the glass and steel towers he ruled from above. He checked the address on Emily's handwritten note for the third time, frowning at the modest bungalow with its carefully tended rose bushes and faded porch swing. This can't be right, he muttered. Peter, sitting in the passenger seat, adjusted his tie more casually than Ethan would have liked. Relax, Ethan. Peter smirked, balancing a bottle of mid-priced wine on his knee. We're here to be humans, not CEOs. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks unnecessarily, smoothing his Italian silk tie as if armor. Remind me again why we're doing this. Because, Peter said, opening the door. Somewhere along the line, you forgot how. Ethan swallowed his annoyance and followed Peter up the worn steps. He knocked, feeling strangely nervous, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his early days pitching investors in borrowed suits. The door opened, and there stood Emily Vargas. But tonight, she wasn't the housekeeper in a tidy uniform hair pinned back. She wore a simple blue dress hair cascading freely over her shoulders. The smile she offered was genuine without agenda or expectation. "Mr. Callahan, you came," she said, a flicker of surprise lighting her features. "Please call me Ethan tonight," he replied, surprising even himself. "And Mr. Monroe, welcome. Please come in." Inside, the air was warm with the aroma of simmering spices and fresh bread. The small home was cozy, lived in, and filled with life. Family photos covered the walls, birthdays, graduations, celebrations of victories both big and small. Colorful throws softened the worn furniture, and the space buzzed with easy laughter and conversation. Ethan felt utterly out of his element. Emily guided them into the living room, where a small crowd mingled. "This is my brother Marco." Emily beamed. "Marco, this is Mr. Callahan." Marco, a young man in his early 20s, jumped up eagerly, hand extended. "Mr. Callahan, sir, I've followed your projects for years. The Callahan Towers, your mixed-use design is revolutionary." Ethan shook his hand, taken aback by the boy's sincerity. "Thank you. Are you in real estate too?" "Architecture student." Marco grinned. "Just started an internship at Reyes & Co. Good firm," Ethan admitted despite himself. Emily continued introducing her family cousins, aunts, an elderly woman seated regally by the window. "My grandmother, Sophia Vargas," Emily said with reverence. "Abuela, this is Mr. Callahan." Sophia's sharp eyes scanned Ethan from head to toe, no trace of deference in her expression. "So this is the man who works you to the bone," she said in thickly accented English. "Abuela," Emily whispered, embarrassed, but Ethan surprisingly found himself chuckling. "It's a pleasure, ma'am." Emily hurried off to check on dinner, leaving Ethan adrift among a sea of unfamiliar faces and unfamiliar warmth. And yet, he didn't mind. For once, the conversation wasn't about stock prices, mergers, or property valuations. The people around him were curious about his work. Yes, but also about him, the person behind the empire. "Let me get you a plate," Aunt Teresa announced, piling food onto his dish before he could object. "You're too skinny, Mr. Callahan. All work and no food, very bad." Peter winked at him from across the room. "Having fun yet, Ice King?" Ethan rolled his eyes. But yes. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't performing. He wasn't negotiating or calculating outcomes. He was just present. In the kitchen, he found Emily stirring a pot that smelled like heaven itself, her grandmother chopping vegetables beside her. "Need help?" Ethan offered, stepping cautiously inside. Emily looked up startled. "You in a kitchen? I've been known to make a mean scrambled egg." He joked, surprising both of them. Sophia muttered something in Spanish, making Emily flush. Ethan caught enough to understand. "You spent your last savings on this dinner," Sophia scolded gently in Spanish. "Money meant for your restaurant. It's an investment. Abuela," Emily replied softly. "If Mr. Callahan likes the food, maybe he can help open doors." Ethan stood frozen. Suddenly, the lavish meal took on a different meaning. This wasn't just for Marco. Emily had hoped in her own dignified, quiet way to earn his respect. Perhaps his support, a knot twisted in his chest. Guilt, perhaps. Something deeper. Definitely. They ate family-style dishes, passed by hand stories, and laughter flowing as freely as the homemade sangria. Emily's family shared tales of their journey from Mexico, the hardships, the sacrifices. Marco spoke of their father's death 5 years prior, and how Emily had put her dreams on hold to raise him. "She could have been a top chef by now," Marco said proudly, But family always comes first for her. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself reflecting on his own beginnings, the ones he had carefully edited from his company bio. The hungry nights, the desperate scrambles to keep the lights on. The memory of those days stirred something he'd locked away long ago. When dessert arrived, a flan so delicate it could have been served in any five-star restaurant, Ethan addressed the table, surprising himself as much as them. "This meal is extraordinary," he said, his tone softer, more human than anyone at the table had heard from him. "You have a remarkable talent, Emily." Emily flushed. "It's my dream to open a place someday. A restaurant called Casa Vargas. Traditional family recipes with a modern twist. A place where everyone feels like they're home." "Like tonight," Ethan said quietly. Later, as they prepared to leave, Emily pressed a small container into his hands. "Leftovers," she explained, offering a shy smile. "No one should eat takeout every night, not even millionaires." The gesture, a simple kindness, not a transaction, struck him deeply. No one had cared how he ate or lived in years. Driving back toward the city skyline, Ethan sat in silence, the container warm on his lap. Peter glanced at him knowingly. Not so terrible, was it? Ethan watched the glittering towers of downtown approach. It was unexpected. "You mean human connection?" "Yeah, it can sneak up on you." Ethan didn't answer, but the simple leftovers sat heavy in his hands. A quiet reminder of an evening that had somehow unsettled the life he had so carefully constructed. In the weeks following the dinner, something unusual began to happen inside Ethan Callahan's meticulously ordered world. Little things. He found himself noticing details about Emily Vargas he had never cared about before. The way she hummed softly when she worked, the way she remembered exactly how he took his coffee, the way she always left the apartment infused with the faint scent of cinnamon, and something comforting. And in turn, he began making small changes he never thought himself capable of, tidying up before she arrived, leaving notes with thank yous he'd never written to anyone. He even caught himself smiling when he heard her key in the lock. Peter, ever the observer, had noticed. "I haven't seen you this invested in someone since college," he teased, leaning against the edge of Ethan's desk. "It's not like that," Ethan replied, closing his laptop a little too quickly. "Right. That's why you asked me what her favorite flowers were last week. Market research?" Ethan grumbled unconvincingly. Peter chuckled. "You do realize she works for you, right? There are dynamics to consider." "I know," Ethan said sharply. "That's why I'm being careful." But careful didn't stop the emotions creeping under his skin. The truth, as much as he fought it, was undeniable. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was someone he admired, someone who made his penthouse feel less like a cold fortress and more like a home. And yet, despite the warmth that bloomed between them, Ethan kept the words locked inside, waiting for the perfect moment. He thought he had found it. After weeks of searching, he had located the ideal property for Emily's dream, Casa Vargas, a cozy corner space in a vibrant up-and-coming neighborhood with a fully renovated kitchen and perfect foot traffic. He prepared the lease papers himself, crafting terms that were more than generous, making sure the contract reflected true partnership, not charity. When Emily mentioned she had Tuesday evening off, Ethan decided it would be the moment. He would surprise her. Finally tell her everything, not just about the restaurant, but about how she had quietly changed his life. What he didn't expect was what he found waiting for him at her house. It started with laughter. He heard it as he approached the porch, the kind of deep, genuine laughter that had become far too rare in his world. For a moment, it made him smile, until he heard another voice, a smooth, familiar tone that turned his stomach to stone. "Emily, darling, your food is divine. I'm telling you, Casa Vargas would make the perfect anchor restaurant for my latest project. Vanessa Drake, his rival. The woman who had stolen the Riverside development deal from him. And now, sitting comfortably in Emily's living room, sipping champagne as if she owned the place. Ethan's heart pounded a mixture of confusion and something dangerously close to betrayal. He knocked sharply. When Emily opened the door, the warmth in her eyes faltered at the sight of his expression. "Ethan, what a surprise." She began her smile uncertain. Behind her, Vanessa rose gracefully from the sofa glass still in hand. "Well, well," she purred. "Small world." The rage surged through him like a tidal wave. "May I speak with you?" Ethan asked Emily, his tone ice cold. Privately. Emily, confused, led him into the tiny backyard. "What's wrong? Why are you here?" "I could ask you the same about Vanessa Drake," Ethan snapped. "Was this all a setup? Get close to me? Use me? Pass information to my competitor?" Emily stared at him, stunned. "What? No, Vanessa is... She's my cousin." Ethan's eyes narrowed, the words hitting like a slap. "Your cousin? The same woman who just humiliated me in front of the city council, and you never thought to mention it." "Why would I? I don't discuss my family with my boss, Ethan." Her voice cracked under the weight of his accusation. "She only reached out recently, after tasting my food at a family gathering. I had no idea you two even knew each other until tonight." But Ethan's walls slammed back up harder than ever. It all made sense now: the dinner, the flattery, the sudden interest in restaurant properties. It was all a game, he said bitterly, the folder of lease papers hanging limp at his side. "I trusted you." Emily reached for him, desperation in her voice. "Please, Ethan, it's not what you think." But he cut her off, his pride and pain roaring louder than reason. "Don't come back to work," he said coldly. "Your final check will be mailed." As he stormed back to his car, he heard her call his name, but he didn't look back. Whatever fragile, tender thing that had been growing between them shattered that night into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The next morning, Ethan reverted to the version of himself the world expected, the Ice King. He called his assistant before sunrise. "Melanie, find a new housekeeping service immediately," he ordered curtly. "And when Ms. Vargas arrives, inform her her services are no longer required." "Is there a problem with her work?" Melanie asked hesitantly. "Just do it," Ethan snapped. Peter found him later that day, obsessively reviewing Vanessa Drake's portfolio, plotting his next strategic move. "You're in early," Peter remarked dryly. "Everything okay?" "Vanessa Drake is Emily Vargas's cousin," Ethan said, without looking up. "I found them cozying up in her living room last night." Peter sat down, crossing his arms. And, Ethan barked, finally looking up. "She's been working in my house for 2 years with access to everything. She probably fed Vanessa information the entire time." Peter stared at him, silent for a long beat. "That's a serious accusation, based on one dinner." "The dinner was part of it," Ethan said bitterly. "Getting close to me, making me think, I don't know. It doesn't matter. She's gone." Peter shook his head. "You fired her, without even letting her explain?" There's nothing to explain," Ethan snapped, turning back to his computer. "I need to prepare a counter-strategy before Vanessa blindsides us again." And with that, the wall went up. For the next few weeks, Ethan drowned himself in work. He stayed late, slept little, and snapped at anyone who dared cross his path. His once spotless penthouse descended into disarray, even with the new cleaning staff, but he barely noticed. He had shut the world out again. One night, as he pored over financial reports, he spotted the small, empty container that had once held Emily's leftovers. It still sat on his kitchen counter untouched since the night she gave it to him. Peter found him staring at it. "Have you tried calling her?" Peter asked softly. "Why would I?" Ethan replied, tossing the container in the trash. "Because you're miserable," Peter said plainly. "And I bet she is too." But Ethan ignored him. Still late that night, as the city lights blinked outside his window, he found himself staring at her name in his phone contacts. His thumb hovered, but he couldn't press send. He wasn't ready. Or maybe he was just afraid. The weeks that followed were the longest Ethan Callahan had endured in years. Despite his furious efforts to outbid Vanessa Drake on every upcoming project, his strategies lacked their usual precision. His focus wavered. Sleep eluded him. Every hollow victory tasted bitter. It wasn't the sting of professional defeat gnawing at him. It was something else. It was the memory of Emily Vargas standing in that small backyard, hurt clouding her eyes as he accused her of something she would never do. The memory haunted him relentlessly, but pride, the old steel trap that had kept him safe all these years, kept him silent, until Peter forced the truth into the light. "You're a damn fool, Ethan," Peter said one morning, slamming a stack of files onto his desk. "You might be brilliant in business, but you are spectacularly stupid when it comes to people." Ethan barely looked up. "Spare me the lecture. I'm not here to lecture," Peter said, voice hardening. "I'm here to tell you that I spoke with Marco. You know, the brother of the woman you fired, without letting her speak." Ethan stiffened, but said nothing. "Guess what I found out?" Peter continued. "Emily turned down every offer Vanessa Drake threw at her, every single one. She didn't sell you out, Ethan. She didn't even know about the rivalry until that night." Ethan sat frozen. She also turned down offers from 3 other investors who approached her after the community dinner. "Do you know why?" Peter crossed his arms, daring Ethan to answer. Ethan swallowed hard. "Why?" Peter leaned in. "Because it wasn't about the restaurant anymore. It was about you." Ethan's defenses crumbled like cheap plaster. The truth hit him like a freight train. He had been wrong, spectacularly wrong, and in his stubbornness, he'd not only destroyed a promising partnership, but crushed something far more fragile, her trust. Ethan stared at the folder of the proposal he had once prepared for her, the folder he never got to show. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan Callahan realized he had no idea what to do next. But he knew one thing for certain. He had to see her again, even if only to apologize. He stood outside her house for 10 long minutes, the spring rain soaking through his expensive tailored suit. He rehearsed his words, discarded them, rehearsed again. Finally, he knocked. When Emily opened the door, her face reflected the war between surprise and residual hurt. 5 minutes, Ethan said quietly. "That's all I ask." She hesitated, then reluctantly stepped aside. The house was quiet tonight. No family, no warmth, buzzing in the air. "Everyone's at the hospital," Emily explained flatly. "Abuela had a stroke. She's in ICU." Ethan's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope she's okay." Silence stretched between them like an unspoken accusation. "Your 5 minutes are ticking," Emily reminded him, arms crossed, defensively. Ethan took a deep breath. Rainwater dripping onto the hardwood floor. "I saw the Casa Vargas name on Vanessa's website," he admitted. "At first, I thought the worst." Again, Emily sighed weary. "She's using the name without my permission. I told her I wouldn't be involved. I know, Ethan said quietly. Peter told me the truth. He also told me you turned down every offer that came after everything that happened. She nodded once stiffly. James has been checking on Marco. He's been kind. Unlike me, Ethan admitted. He drew a deep, shaky breath. This part, the vulnerability, was foreign territory. Emily, I came to apologize, he said, voice low but steady. I was wrong about everything. She said nothing, waiting. I accused you of betrayal. I assumed the worst because that's what I've always done. I've spent my life building walls. I thought if I kept people out, they couldn't hurt me. His voice wavered. But you broke through those walls without even trying. With your food, your laughter, the way you care about people, about me. You did something no one's done in years. Emily's arms dropped to her sides, the hurt in her eyes softening, replaced by something more complex. I made you dinner, she said quietly, and you turned it into a crime scene. Ethan winced, but she wasn't wrong. I panicked. He confessed. Because the truth is, you made me feel things I haven't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Things like hope, connection, the ridiculous possibility that someone might genuinely care about me for me, not for my title or my bank account. Tears glistened in Emily's eyes, but she didn't look away. I never used you, Ethan, she whispered. I know that now, he replied, stepping closer. But I also know I don't deserve your trust again overnight. That's why I came here with this. He held out the folder. She hesitated, took it, and opened it. Inside were the lease papers for the property he had found. Favorable terms, equal partnership, all crafted with her independence in mind. This isn't charity, Ethan explained. It's a business proposal. You bring your vision, your culinary genius, your heart. I bring my resources and expertise. 50-50 partnership. I'll stay a silent investor unless you need me. Emily looked up, eyes searching his. And what about Abuela's hospital bills? She asked, still guarded. There's a signing bonus, Ethan replied. Enough to cover her care and give your family some breathing room. She bristled. We don't need charity. It's not charity, Ethan repeated gently. It's an advance against future profits. You earn it. Emily studied him carefully. Why are you doing this? Because I believe in you, Ethan said simply, and because I was wrong, and I want to make it right. He hesitated, then added, voice cracking slightly. Even if you never want to see me again outside of business meetings, Casa Vargas should exist. Emily stared at the papers for a long moment. It's generous. It's smart, Ethan corrected softly, and fair. Another pause. I need time, she said finally, to think, to breathe, to focus on Abuela. Ethan nodded, relief washing over him like a wave. Of course. All the time you need. As he turned to leave, she called after him. Ethan. He looked back. About what you said. About having feelings for me. Her voice trembled. I have them too. But right now, I can't think about that. Not with everything going on. Ethan smiled, gentle this time. Family comes first. I understand that now. That simple acknowledgement, so different from the man who once scoffed at such sentiment, brought the first real smile from her in weeks. Thank you, she whispered. The next morning, Ethan was surprised to find Emily waiting outside his office. I've thought about your proposal. She said, her tone businesslike. I'll accept, she continued, on one condition. Name it. We don't stop at one Casa Vargas, she said firmly. We build more. A collection of family-style establishments that create jobs, honor my heritage, and empower others like me. Ethan grinned, a spark of the old competitive drive rekindling in his chest, but this time for something bigger than profits. I was thinking too small, he admitted. Is that a yes? Emily smiled, the light returning to her eyes. It's a yes. Partners. Ethan extended his hand formally, but Emily surprised him by pulling him into a hug instead. Partners, she agreed softly. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Callahan realized the walls around his heart weren't broken. They were finally open. 1 year later, East Brighton was alive with a celebration the neighborhood hadn't seen in decades. Casa Vargas had finally opened its doors. The once forgotten corner lot was now a beacon of life, a vibrant, colorful restaurant that blended the old-world charm of Emily Vargas's family recipes with the inviting warmth of a community gathering space. The exterior was adorned with hand-painted murals celebrating the neighborhood's heritage. Inside, the aromas of slow-braised carnitas, hand-rolled tamales, and warm cinnamon-infused cafe filled the air. The line to get in stretched around the block. Food critics, city officials, local artists, and everyday families mingled under the string lights, waiting for a taste of something more than just a meal. They came for an experience, for the heart and soul Emily had poured into every detail. Ethan Callahan stood at the entrance, watching the scene unfold. But this time, he wasn't the man in the $5,000 suit standing apart from the crowd. He wasn't there to cut ribbons or give speeches. He was simply part of it. He belonged. As Emily took the small stage to welcome guests, she was radiant, strong, confident, surrounded by the people she loved. Her grandmother, Abuela Sofia, fully recovered, sat at the best table in the house, accepting compliments with the grace of a queen. 1 year ago, this was just a dream. Emily's voice rang out, carrying through the crowd. Today, thanks to all of you, and to my partner in business and in life, that dream is real. Her eyes found Ethan's in the crowd. The love between them was palpable. Ethan never thought he'd see himself in this place in this way. Once, success meant stock prices, award plaques, and glossy magazine features. Now, it was found in laughter around a crowded table, in the pride shining in Emily's eyes, in the way Marco showed off the restaurant's custom-designed architecture, his own fingerprints now on the blueprints. Even Vanessa Drake, once a rival, now stood among them as a friend, raising a glass in good-natured surrender. To unexpected partnerships, she toasted. Peter added, chuckling. And to the power of a homemade meal. The crowd roared with laughter. As the party carried on into the evening, Ethan quietly took Emily's hand, guiding her away from the celebration. She glanced at him, curious. "Where are we going?" she asked, smiling. "You'll see," Ethan replied, eyes twinkling. He led her through a hidden stairwell at the back of the building, up to the rooftop, a secret project he had added to the blueprints, without telling her. When they reached the top, Emily gasped. A rooftop garden stretched before them, glimmering under a canopy of fairy lights. Raised beds overflowed with herbs, vegetables, and flowers, everything she loved to cook, with everything that connected her to her family's culinary roots. "Ethan, when did you—" "I wanted it to be ready for opening night," he said softly. "So you could grow your own ingredients right here. A living, breathing piece of your dream, on top of the world." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she walked among the fragrant beds of cilantro, mint, and peppers, the city skyline glowing in the distance. When she turned back to him, she found him on one knee. A small velvet box rested in his hand. Emily Vargas, Ethan began, his voice tender but sure. You taught me that true wealth isn't measured in square footage or market shares. It's in the moments we create together, in connection, in courage, in love. Her breath caught in her throat. A year ago, I was a man who believed feelings were liabilities. You changed that. You changed me. Will you marry me? For a moment, Emily could only nod, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. They embraced under the stars, the rooftop garden their witness. Below them, the sounds of life filled Casa Vargas' music laughter, the clatter of dishes, the hum of a community celebrating not just a restaurant, but resilience, family, and new beginnings. Marco, now working as an intern at Callahan and Monroe Developments, shared plans for a second Casa Vargas location with Peter. Abuela Sofia held court telling stories of Emily's early kitchen disasters. Even Vanessa offered to invest in future expansions, this time with Emily's full blessing. But on that rooftop, none of that mattered. All that mattered was them, two people who had come from opposite worlds, who had fought, misunderstood, hurt, and healed, who had learned that the most unlikely partnerships could become the most meaningful ones. As they sat together, Ethan pressed a kiss to Emily's forehead. Do you realize, he whispered, all of this started because you invited me to dinner. Emily laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. Funny how a simple meal can change everything. No, Ethan corrected gently. You changed everything. And in that moment, surrounded by the scents of fresh basil and blooming marigolds, Ethan Callahan, once the coldest man in the city, knew with absolute certainty he was finally home. Throughout his life, Ethan Callahan believed success was measured in numbers, contracts, and towering achievements. From his glass-walled penthouse to his cold boardrooms, he lived a life meticulously built around control, precision, and distance. People were transactions. Feelings were liabilities. To Ethan, vulnerability was a weakness he couldn't afford. Then Emily Vargas entered his world. A hard-working housekeeper with dreams far beyond what her job title suggested, Emily was everything Ethan had forgotten. The world could be warm, resilient, connected to family culture and community. Their worlds collided when Emily, with courage and heart, invited Ethan into her humble home for a family dinner that cost her the last of her savings. That simple act of kindness unraveled the carefully constructed walls around Ethan's heart. Through misunderstanding, pain, and self-imposed distance, Ethan and Emily's journey taught them both that trust, respect, and human connection are not just ideals. They are necessities for a fulfilled life. Ethan learned that leadership wasn't about dominance or perfection. It was about humility, listening, and being willing to see people for who they truly are, not just for the roles they play in your life. When Ethan accused Emily of betrayal, it wasn't just her trust he broke, it was his own opportunity for growth. Yet life gave him a second chance. Through vulnerability, sincere apologies, and actions that honored Emily's independence and dignity, Ethan found his way back not just to her, but to a version of himself he had long abandoned. Their story culminated not in a boardroom victory, but in the opening of Casa Vargas, a restaurant that became more than a business. It became a home, a place where people could gather, share, and feel like they belonged. Ethan's world shifted from marble floors and profit margins to rooftop gardens and shared meals under the stars. The lesson from their story is powerful and timely. In our fast-paced, achievement-driven world, it's easy to forget that true wealth lies not in what we own, but in the relationships we nurture. Success means nothing if it leaves us isolated, guarded, and disconnected. Ethan and Emily's journey reminds us to stay open to the people who challenge our views, who awaken our hearts, and who show us that kindness and respect can build bridges where status and pride only create walls. How can we apply this today? Start by looking at the people around you not just as coworkers, service providers, or strangers, but as individuals with dreams, struggles, and stories. Take the time to listen. Appreciate the unseen efforts others make. And if you've built walls out of fear or past hurt, dare to open a door. You might be surprised at the connections waiting on the other side. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where you misjudged someone only to realize later how wrong you were? Or perhaps you've experienced the healing power of connection in an unexpected place. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories and reflections. And if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to continue creating more heartfelt and inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for being part of our community.